What was supposed to be a simple eviction hearing quickly turned into a chaotic courtroom standoff. The judge called the case, expecting a routine discussion about unpaid rent, but instead, the defendant refused to even confirm his own identity. Rather than answering basic questions, he claimed he was only the beneficiary of the name on the case, using familiar sovereign citizen arguments that immediately raised the judge's concern. The court tried several times to move the hearing forward. The judge asked simple, direct questions, but the defendant dodged each one, repeating legal phrases and refusing to acknowledge that he was the tenant being evicted. As the tension in the courtroom grew, the judge made it clear that the hearing could not continue unless the defendant properly identified himself. Meanwhile, the landlord's attorney explained that the eviction was due to unpaid rent and that the defendant had failed to meet his financial obligations. The defendant insisted that a third-party service had already paid his back rent, but there was no proof the money ever reached the landlord. The court reminded him that it was his responsibility to make sure the payments were actually received. Despite multiple chances to cooperate, the defendant continued to argue technicalities instead of addressing the real issue. The judge's patience quickly ran out. With no proper response and no confirmation of identity, the court ruled in favor of the landlord and granted a default judgment for eviction. What started as a simple housing dispute ended with the defendant losing the case entirely, not because of a complex legal battle, but because he refused to answer the most basic question in the courtroom. In the end, the judge's decision was swift, clear, and final.
This is Pasadena Investments LLC versus Dwayne Davis Jr. and all occupants at 2170 East Jefferson, Unit 1007.
Your Honor, for the record, Attorney Frederick J. Coleman, P. 56548 on behalf of the plaintiff. Your Honor, Mr. Davis at this time owes $6,706, court cost of $157. This is a subsequent hearing.
All right, Mr. Davis or Ms. Davis? Okay,
yeah, I'm
the
beneficiary of Dwayne Davis right here. The beneficiary.
What is it?
Are you Dwayne? Are you Dwayne? Excuse me. Are you Dwayne Davis Jr.?
I'm the beneficiary owner right here.
Do you reside at 2170 East Jefferson, Unit 1007?
Yes, the estate does assign there.
Do you reside in that property?
The beneficiary, yes.
Do you? Who the person I'm talking to? Is that the person who is in this property at 2170 East Jefferson? You're not answering my question.
I don't fully understand it. Say it again.
All right. Okay. At this point, I don't see anyone who resides at 2170 East Jefferson, Unit 1007. If you do reside there, please make the court aware of it.
Okay.
Your Honor, since the defendant has not identified himself as the defendant in this particular case.
I just did. I just told you I'm the beneficiary.
Your Honor,
the name.
Your Honor, since the defendant has not identified himself as a person in this property, he's attempting to try to act like he's a sovereign. This property is owned and is an apartment building. We're asking for a default judgment at this time. If he decides to pay it, that's great. If not, we'll be moving forward after time expires.
Before we proceed with this matter, can I ask the director of the beneficiary? I'm talking to the plaintiff, sir. My legal person, I'm showing you right here, a corporation. Can you write me in 21 days and provide me evidence that you have legal?
Your Honor, none of that is required by law in this court. I'm asking for a default judgment this time. Quit wasting the court's time. To file the appropriate court paper or identify himself to the court as you've requested on numerous occasions, then we can proceed forward. At this time, playing these legal games is against.
I have a birth certificate right here.
The law. Two, we provide the court with a lease agreement. We provide the court with the ledger. We're asking for a default judgment.
The court is in receipt of a summons, a complaint, a demand for non-payment of rent, as well as a lease agreement.
The summons was never notarized.
Signed with Dwayne Davis Jr. as well as the proof of service. Mr. Davis, Dwayne Davis Jr., how much is your monthly rent?
I want to say 900.
When's the last time you paid rent?
Long time. Siri paid my back balance, but Pasadena never put it to my account. So I consider Pasadena either took the money or what. I don't know what they did with it, but Siri definitely paid it. It's on the record. It's on my the record with the Siri. You can find it in their profile. But they're supposed to pay my back balance.
I don't know. I can't find it in my profile. So you qualify. Sarah paid. How much did Sarah pay?
They paid up to like September, but they didn't pay they're supposed to pay July, August, September, but Pasadena never put that to my account.
Your Honor, if it wasn't applied, my client didn't receive it. That is not our burden.
Okay.
It's his burden.
But that's in documents though that they were supposed to pay. I have it in documents.
Your Honor, I'm not going to sit and argue all day, Your Honor. Bottom line is, the money is for his benefit. It is not for my client's benefit. Just like paying a mortgage payment. If I send a mortgage payment in, if it's not received, it's still on me. If you send a mortgage payment on my behalf and it's not received, it's still on the person who has the mortgage. He's the renter. It is his responsibility to have the money paid, or to whoever's paying on his behalf, that we receive it. We have done everything we're supposed to do. The documentation speaks for itself. At this time, again, I'm requesting for either default judgment or judgment by hearing.
And then I'm talking to the plaintiff. Can you just write me and saying that you have authority as a public servant to me?
Your Honor, I am not writing. I'm not
Mr. Davis. This is a landlord-tenant court. This is summary proceedings. This is the second hearing, and you're afforded legal counsel. Legal counsel was available. They said that they could not assist you at this matter. Are you even identifying yourself as Dwayne Davis Jr.?
No, I'm the beneficiary.
So are you not Dwayne Davis Jr.?
No, I am not. I am not.
Okay. We are entering. The court has not received the call or answer from Dwayne Davis Jr. Does anyone on this Zoom reside at 2170 East Jefferson, number 1007, who lives in that property on this Zoom?
Your Honor, again, no one's responded asking for my default judgment. We can submit it to the court before the end of the day, along with a full ledger.
Default judgment granted.
Thank you, Judge.
Please submit the paperwork. Colin, you're free to leave. Well, nobody identified themselves, so calling the next case.
In a tense courtroom that started like any other routine eviction hearing, things quickly turned into a strange and frustrating exchange between a judge and a man who refused to acknowledge the most basic question in the room, his own identity. The case involved a tenant named Dwayne Davis Jr., who was facing eviction for failing to pay rent. According to the landlord's side, not only had he fallen behind on payments, but there were also allegations that he had taken money from a COVID relief fund that was meant to help struggling tenants stay in their homes. Instead of using the money properly, the accusation was that he kept it while continuing to live rent-free. But when the hearing began, the issue wasn't just about rent anymore. The real problem became Davis's refusal to identify himself as the defendant in the case. From the very start, the judge tried to confirm the basics. He asked a simple question: was he Dwayne Davis Jr., the tenant named in the eviction filing? It's a question that normally takes seconds to answer. But instead of confirming his identity, the man in the courtroom began speaking in a way that immediately raised red flags. He didn't say yes or no. Instead, he claimed that he was not the person named in the documents. He described himself as the beneficiary of that name, not the actual individual being sued. The judge paused, clearly trying to give him a chance to clarify. Maybe there was confusion. Maybe he misunderstood the question. But as the conversation continued, it became obvious that this wasn't confusion at all. The man was using what are commonly known as sovereign citizen arguments, claims that people can separate themselves from their legal names, contracts, or even the authority of the court, just by using certain phrases or theories. The judge tried to keep things simple. He repeated the question in different ways, hoping to get a direct answer. But every time, Davis avoided it. He would talk in circles, refer to himself as a beneficiary, or claim he wasn't the person listed on the paperwork. It was clear the judge had seen this before. His tone stayed calm, but the frustration started to show. Courtrooms run on clear procedures. When someone refuses to answer basic identification questions, it slows everything down and makes it difficult for the court to proceed. Still, the judge gave him more chances. He explained that the court needed to confirm who he was. Without that, the hearing couldn't move forward. But instead of cooperating, Davis doubled down on his position. He continued to insist that he wasn't the tenant named in the case, even though he was standing there in the courtroom responding to the allegations. The landlord's attorney sat quietly during much of this exchange, waiting for the judge to regain control of the hearing. From the attorney's perspective, the facts were simple. Rent hadn't been paid, notices had been sent, and now they were asking the court for an eviction order. Eventually, the conversation shifted to the issue of the unpaid rent itself. Davis claimed that the rent had actually been covered by a third-party service called Siri. According to him, the back rent had been paid through that program, and the landlord simply hadn't applied the funds to his account. The judge turned to the landlord's attorney to confirm. The attorney explained that there was no record of the payment being properly received or credited. And even if a third-party service was involved, it was still the tenant's responsibility to make sure the rent actually reached the landlord. The judge asked Davis if he had proof, receipts, confirmation numbers, or any documentation showing the rent had been paid. But instead of providing evidence, he returned to the same arguments about names, beneficiaries, and legal technicalities. At that point, the judge's patience was clearly wearing thin. He reminded Davis that this was an eviction hearing, not a philosophical debate about identity or legal theories found online. The court needed straightforward answers, not complicated word games. But the responses didn't change. Davis continued to avoid identifying himself as the tenant. He continued to argue that he wasn't the person named in the case. And he continued to offer explanations that didn't address the actual issue, whether the rent had been paid. The judge gave him one more chance. He explained that if Davis refused to identify himself, the court would have no choice but to move forward without his participation. In legal terms, that meant a default judgment. A default judgment happens when one party fails to properly respond or participate in a case. Instead of a full hearing, the court can rule in favor of the other side because there's no meaningful defense being presented. Even with that warning, Davis didn't change his approach. He continued to insist that he was only the beneficiary of the name on the paperwork. He refused to say that he was the tenant being sued. And he offered no solid evidence that the rent had been paid. That was the final straw. The judge announced that, due to Davis's refusal to properly identify himself or respond to the claims, the court would grant a default judgment in favor of the landlord. The eviction would proceed. It was a short, firm decision, but one that reflected the judge's repeated attempts to give Davis a chance to participate normally in the hearing. As the ruling was delivered, it became clear how the situation had unfolded. The eviction wasn't decided because of some complicated legal argument. It came down to simple facts: unpaid rent, no proof of payment, and a defendant who refused to acknowledge his own identity in court. Cases like this have become more common in recent years, especially with the spread of sovereign citizen theories online. These arguments often promise people that they can avoid debts, taxes, or legal responsibility by using certain phrases or claiming special legal status. But in real courtrooms, those arguments almost never work. Judges deal with actual laws, actual contracts, and actual evidence. When someone refuses to answer basic questions or provide proof, the court usually moves forward without them. In this case, the result was an eviction order that might have been avoided if the defendant had simply addressed the court normally and provided clear evidence of payment, if such evidence existed. Instead, the hearing became a reminder of what happens when internet legal theories collide with real-world court procedures. The judge didn't need to debate complex legal philosophy. He didn't need to argue about beneficiaries or corporate identities. He only needed to determine whether the tenant had paid rent and whether the defendant was the person named in the case. When those questions weren't answered, the outcome became inevitable. And just like that, what could have been a straightforward eviction hearing turned into a strange legal standoff, one that ended not with a dramatic argument, but with a simple default judgment and an order for eviction.